One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. OMG. Okay, that was super dramatic, right? Hang on, let's start over. I am insanely happy to bring you today's episode. Is that right? Like, is that a good way to start this? I'm just so excited about everything that we're going to talk about here today, because I have a special guest that I have wanted to bring onto the show for a while and talk about her journey podcasting. And that person is my mom. And she has an incredible podcast, and we talk about the ins and outs of her first year. And we just, it's going to be so incredible. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? So like I said, today I have my mom on the podcast. So Nanette Blair, which it sounds kind of weird to introduce her that way, but that is who she is. And what she does is has an incredible podcast called the Ediful Gardens Podcast. So she teaches landscape design, but she shows you how to create edible and beautiful landscapes together. Do you see the word smash there? Edible and beautiful. Her motto and inspiration behind the entire podcast is you won't find any tomato cages here. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of things you won't find here, including pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, or any other sides. What you will find here are landscapes designed for beauty, fun, reflection, peace, entertaining, and the list goes on. The point is, it's your yard, your home, and your taste. And I'm just going to dive right into it, because we spoke about amazing things that she's been able to do with her podcast in her first year. And
I'm excited. So let's dive right into my interview with my mom.
All right, everybody. I am super excited about today's interview because we have a very special guest on the show today, my mom. So welcome to the show, Mom.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So
Thank you for having me.
yes, as of us recording this, we're actually both here. Oh my gosh, gasp. We're not social distancing because they just lifted the ban here for us to, kind of hang out with people that we're related to, I guess. Like that's really the only people I
don't
feel
know. We might be
comfortable.
breaking the law. I don't know.
No, maybe we shouldn't be talking about this. We'll edit that part out. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you just won't put the date.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. We won't say what a day of the year we are recording this, but my mom is actually here in the studio, aka the office here at Profit Media, and I'm really excited to do this. So, y'all have heard me talk about Mom on the show. You've heard me talk about how she has a podcast, and that's what we are going to talk about today. So, I really just want to dive right into what was the initial thought process for you for like, okay, think I'm going to do this? Like, just to tell us all the things about the beginning of your podcast journey.
Well, I have been listening to podcasts for over a decade.
Longer than me.
When podcasting was brand new, because I had a job where I was in sales and I had a territory. I was either listening to books on tape, actually cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And then, where you go rent them from Cracker Barrel and then you turn them back in or whatever.
That's crazy.
And then I went to DVD or what do you call it? CDs that you put in and I started finding podcasts and I liked listening to those. And so I knew what podcast was. A lot of people my age don't even really know what a podcast is.
Yeah.
They'll say, "Oh, I've been watching your podcasts on Facebook." And I'm like, no, you haven't.
That's my Facebook Lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I was doing the gardening thing and I knew what I wanted. I do edible landscaping. I got certified in permaculture design and went through the whole Master Gardener's class. And you were saying, you need to do something with this, And so I was like, I don't know what. I mean, I can talk about gardening whenever I go to dinner parties. This basically saves everybody else from having to listen to everything that's going on in my garden.
Tell everybody your phrase. I don't think I've said it here. I know that I said it whenever I spoke on stage last, but tell everybody what your phrase is.
You were talking about me on stage?
Yes, I did. No, I got permission. Don't act like I got permission to say this. But tell them what you say.
Are you talking about the 11 months pregnant? Yeah. I always said that I feel like, when it comes to content, we talk just about every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, I don't have a problem with coming up with content. It's just a matter of prioritizing what I'm going to say and keeping it down to 30 minutes or an hour for a podcast because there's so much to say about gardening. It's just a matter of,
We have kids screaming in the background. We don't know what's going on, but we're hoping that the men that are in charge out there will take care of it. They're fine. Keep going.
Okay, so I was like, I think I could do this, but I was telling her when I was taking her course, which I was one of the first persons. I don't think I was the first person to sign up for the course, but I was like, I'll do it. Like, how do you do all this? I knew what a podcast was, but I didn't know how to do it. And you already had it figured out because you were doing it. And so I said, I'll take the course. So I took the course. I said, getting back to what you were saying, I feel like I'm 11 months pregnant in the month of July. And if you've ever been pregnant or been married to someone who was pregnant, you know what I'm talking about. It's like, I'm ready. I'm so ready to get this out of me. Just get it out. So that's when I started doing the podcast.
And so, first of all, what's the name of your podcast?
It's the Ediful Gardens Podcast. It's kind of a word smash. It means edible and beautiful.
I love it.
So it's edible landscaping, basically. I just mix everything together. It's not rows and rows of peppers or rows and rows of tomatoes because scientifically, It doesn't make sense. And aesthetically, to me, it just made perfect sense to go ahead and do it that way.
So when did you start your podcast? So tell us a little bit about like, because I know you launched in March of 2019, right?
Actually, February, because I made a mistake.
We love to share mistakes.
Yeah, on the very first episode, I uploaded, I think I put publish immediately, and I didn't mean to. I published episode number 4 was the first one that went up. And episode number 1 and episode number 2 and episode number 3 weren't even uploaded, and I didn't even know it. So like, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just go with it.
Well, I love that because, we love to share, especially like our faux pas where we totally messed up, but also like just the realness about like, it's a little tricky sometimes to figure out the things like the steps, like you got to do this and you got to do this, but you've been podcasting for more than a year now. So what was it like leading up to launching? Like, can you?
Oh gosh. Okay. I remember the very first thing that really made me nervous was just declaring it. And it's funny because I have a brother who's an actor. He also has a day job and a family and responsibilities and everything. And I remember him telling me, we were sitting at a Japanese food restaurant, and he said, I said, well, so tell me about this acting thing. What are you doing? And he was like, oh, it's just something that I'm just trying. And I was like, well, are you into it? And he was like, yeah, I really love it. And I was like, well, if you're into it, then just declare it. Say, I'm an actor. And I remember the reason that I got this from when I was taking flying lessons. My flying
a plane, guys, flying an actual airplane, not just like, oh, I'm flying around the backyard. Like, no, flying an actual airplane. Yes, you heard that right. Okay, continue.
So my flight instructor said, you need to declare it. I'm a pilot. And, something changes in you when you do that, when you declare it. So that was one of the first steps in the course. I was like, oh, crap. I have to declare it, which means I need to tell people I'm going to start a podcast. That was scary. But I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. So doing that declaration of saying I'm going to do a podcast, it was really scary, but for me, that made all the difference because I declared it and I put it out on Facebook and I told some people I'm starting a podcast, and then it was real. Yeah. And really, I don't think that I would have done it if I hadn't taken that first step. And that was part of the course. I was like, okay, I guess I'll do it.
Well, and it's funny too, because like, I've never really thought about that because in the course, I don't think we word it as so much as like declaring like I'm a podcaster. But that's what I
heard in my mind.
Right. Exactly. But now that you say that, I'm like, it's so true because new podcasters will, they'll start creating ideas and like they actually don't have a published podcast yet. It's like kind of all in theory still. Yeah. It's like quote unquote.
It's out there in the ether.
But if I were to say something about, well, you're a podcaster, they're kind of like still look over their shoulder like, are you talking to me? Like, but I don't have any, like I haven't done this. I'm like, well, have you ever pressed record and recorded yourself? Boom, you're a podcaster,
right?
But yeah, taking that first step is scary. So how did that feel when you did? So you did it, you put it out there.
It was, it's like anything else. It's like just the buildup was the scariest thing. Right. Once I actually pushed send, I'm starting a podcast. And I think I said, I could use your prayers because this 55, I think at the time I was 54, this 54-year-old person is not a technical genius. I'm not the Wizard of Oz when it comes to, the easiest part was really putting together the podcast. The hardest part for me was all of the, how do you upload an excerpt or an audiogram? Is that what you call it? Yeah. I don't even really remember.
Yeah.
To social media. Like what's a hashtag?
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff, because I didn't grow up with that stuff, and you didn't either.
Right.
Your kids are growing up with it, but yeah, it was how does everything flow together? Like marketing it, I guess, was the biggest thing, the marketing part.
Well, I love that you share, just the technical aspect, because I feel like that's where so many people struggle. And that's like one of their biggest mental blocks is like, I can't figure it out. And I love to just tell people like, man, if you can figure out your content and exactly who you're talking to, which I feel like you had nailed down from the very beginning. It wasn't like you were talking about 15 different passions. You were like, I just want it to be about this one thing. And I think that actually is one of the biggest struggles that most podcasters have, because they want to talk about so many other things.
For me, it was, and I don't know if I'm allowed, can I talk about ICA?
Yeah, go ahead. Your ideal listener.
Yeah, my ideal listener. Okay, so I started a YouTube channel like a couple years before, and I only put up maybe like 4 videos, and I knew I wanted to do it, but I had no clue any of the details. Again, going back to the technical, I'm not the Wizard of Oz when it comes to all that kind of stuff, but I knew I wanted to put it out there. I really felt like I was being led to do this, and that I could really solve some problems for people, because I had made all the mistakes. I did some stupid stuff when it comes to gardening back in the day. And I knew that I don't like to do hard work, and I knew I wanted to do it in a way, and I found out that I could do it in a way that it's less and less and less work over time. And I want to be able to garden well into my 80s or 90s or 100s or whatever. So I started the YouTube channel, and before I even thought about doing a podcast, and I had no subscribers, I had no views, I had nothing, but I had a few, because I had done it for a school garden. I'm also a certified grant writer, and a friend of mine asked me to help them write this grant for a school garden. So I said, okay, well, we just moved into our house and we're moving, but okay, yeah, I'll do it. And so I did that, and I did these videos for them. So I had somebody specific that I was really talking to. It wasn't like I was talking to the whole world.
Right.
And it was like, I know there's a lot of people out there that are smarter than me, especially when it comes to gardening. There's a lot of people that have PhDs in soil science, and there's people that are a lot further advanced than me in certain aspects and areas, especially with microbiology and all that stuff. And I felt like I was going to be judged. It was that imposter syndrome kicking in. And so I said, when I started doing YouTube videos where I wasn't talking directly to those kids for the school garden, they called themselves, their garden club was the Planty People. And I said, okay, Planty People, this is how you make a compost pile or whatever. And then whenever I started talking to the whole world, it got really, really hard.
Right.
And that was another thing that I learned from your course, is to really hone in on or zone in on exactly who I'm speaking to. And when I did that, that made all the difference in the world. Basically, I was talking to myself 20 years ago.
Right.
I was talking to my 35-year-old self, the things I really wanted to know before I ever started gardening, because I haven't been gardening my whole life. My parents didn't garden. And but there's a lot of people out there that don't know as much as I do. And I just wanted to help, because I have made all the mistakes. Yeah. I wanted to say, yes, you can do that if you want to, but, like do a raised bed. You don't have to have lumber to garden. I always say that now. You do not have to have lumber to grow food.
Yeah.
But that's what I did when I first started gardening. I was like, I'm going to grow food, so I must have a raised bed. And I don't do that anymore. And I respect people that want to do that anyway. It's like, okay, you make your own decision on that. But I have done it all the ways. And now I know, hopefully I can just save people some time and solve some problems.
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
Well, I think that whenever it comes to coming up with content for your podcast, because this is actually kind of where I want to take the conversation, because I know a lot of people listening are like, okay, yes, they're nodding along. They're like, I have so much to say. I know exactly who I want to help. Where do I actually get started with the content? Because you and I, like, I think that this is, maybe it's in our DNA, as we have 1,000 ideas every single day, which can be a blessing and a curse. So it's like, where do you get started? And you've even said, you're like, I could speak for 4 lifetimes and still not finish what I have to say.
Yeah.
And so, so where do you get started? And tell us a little bit about how your podcast is actually formatted. Do you publish every day? Do you publish how long? Like, how does all that look like?
Okay. So when I first started, my intention was to do 1 episode a week. And then I had so much to say, I just wanted to get it all out there. I started doing daily, so it was 5 days a week, and I called them like a little mini series. So this little mini series was about this little mini series was about that, and this little mini series was about that. And then the garden season came into full play, and I didn't have time really to produce that many, because let's get real. I mean, it's not just you just show up to the microphone and you talk. You have to do the editing. I do my own editing.
Okay, let's just stop right there for a second, because I've had people say like, "Oh, your mom has a podcast. Like, that's cute. You must do everything for her." No, I'm not taking any credit for any. I've never helped her with any. I've given her feedback on like your art, like way, way back in the day, and that was, I think, the only thing I've ever helped you with.
Yeah,
with the podcast.
Honestly, I don't know if I remember that a year ago, all the details, but
I just wanted to give her the credit where credit is due. She does everything for her podcast.
Yeah.
Everything. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to make that known. It's like, just because I'm the podcast expert, I don't do her podcast for her.
Well, as far as what, in my genre, in gardening, in my industry, whatever you want to call it, I just needed to, like I said, 11 months pregnant in the month of July, I just needed to get some things out of me. So I got them out of me. And my intention was, when I did future recordings, that I could refer back to those shows. Right. So I can, and I do, like my number 1 podcast is episode number 2, which I hate referring people back to that. The information is still very accurate. It's very true. Nothing has changed about that. But I hate referring people back to that, because I sound so scripted, so regimented, so much like a robot. Like I'm standing on stage in front of a bunch of people I've never publicly spoken before,
Yeah.
So, but the information, I realized after all this, after a year, they don't care. Like on my YouTube videos, I hated being in front of the camera. I love being behind the camera. I like taking pictures. I like taking video, but I hated being in front. And the microphone really wasn't that hard, but I realized people don't care what I look like. They don't care that I say or too much. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they don't, because people are showing up. And there I go.
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, y'all, she has totally blown me out of the water, because she has a consistent top 100 podcast for the garden category.
Yeah.
Or what is it? Home and garden?
Home and garden.
Home and garden.
Yeah, that was another issue, because I changed I think I started out as food, and I don't think they had a home and garden category before.
Yeah.
And then I changed to home and garden with your help. I was like, I don't think I'm in the right category. And we sat down one day and you helped me figure out how to change it, and I changed it, and then it was like my peak position at one time was number 2.
That's crazy.
And
awesome.
But and the thing about that is, that's really cool. I don't know if I'm patting myself on the back here or whatever, but that's home and garden. So there's not a category just for garden. That's home and garden. So it might be how to clean your home, how to organize your home, and then how to grow tomatoes. If they're all lumped in together in the same category. But yeah, whenever I changed that, it changed. And I think it was like, I counted at one time, it was like 9 or 10 different countries.
That's awesome.
That it was in the top 100.
Yeah.
So.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah. I'm so proud of her. Cause like I said, guys, like I don't do this for her. Cause like I've told several people, I'm like, yeah, my mom has a podcast. And they're like, oh, like that's sweet. You let her do her thing and then you record it and you mark it. I was like, I don't do anything for her podcast.
No,
She's
she
done
doesn't.
of this.
I wish she did.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
I'm just like, I want to tell you, I'm so proud of you because I think so much of it has to do with your passion. I really do.
Yeah.
Because you are super passionate about everything and you have and I think that so much of your giving heart comes from you wish you would have had this information when you started.
Yes.
And so you understand where people are coming from when they're in the garden.
You know, for other people that are wanting to do a podcast, I think that once you understand, once you have clarity on the fact that there's nobody else like you.
Right.
And that took a while for me to really grasp that. Okay, so this method is this gardening method is really cool, but it's got a hole in it. There's something that's is a missing piece of the puzzle, and then this method, it has a hole in it. And a lot of these really good gardening methods overlapped, and I did that for myself. And I thought, everybody else should know about this,
Right?
And so, but the other thing that I think really made sense for me is that your vibe attracts your tribe. There's nobody else like you. Like I've told you this before, Crystal. So there's a guy on YouTube that he has really good information, but I can't stand the way he sounds.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's a great guy. And I would love to have, coffee with him and sit and talk about gardening. But as far as watching him and listening to his voice, it's like fingernails on the chalkboard. But there's a lot of people that follow him. And so he has his own little vibe that a lot of people like. He's not a Texan. Maybe a lot of people, and I'm always surprised at people that are listening to me from other countries. At first I was like, what are they just trying to learn English or something?
Yeah.
It's like a Mexican soap opera where you're trying to learn Spanish. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's talk about that real fast. Cause I remember the first time you looked at your stats and you saw people were listening internationally. Like what was that feeling? Cause I know what it felt like for me, but
I was like, where's Latvia?
Yeah.
I don't even know where that is.
Yeah.
And then when we went on a cruise recently, we were in the Normandy region of France and there was a bartender there from Latvia. And I was talking to her. I was like, oh, tell me more about your country.
I know where that is now.
I actually know someone from Latvia. But
well, how did it feel like knowing that people were listening that you had you'd never met him?
I was shocked.
You don't know where anybody is.
I was totally shocked. It was. And again, it just kind of goes back to, I guess they just want the information. They don't care that I have a Texas twang or that I say y'all or what I say or too much or whatever. They don't care about that. They just wanted the information that I have because I have some good information. I really do.
Yeah.
Especially about growing things in a very all natural way.
Right.
No pesticides, no herbicides, no fungicides. That's all they care about.
Yeah.
They don't care that I have a Texas twang. I don't know. But to answer your question, it was really cool. It was very humbling to me. It was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think I counted them up once. I was like 40 different countries.
That's awesome.
And a lot of them are in Australia, Canada, and the UK. Of course, that's where they speak a lot of English. But those countries are very well known for being big time gardeners. So I was really humbled by the fact that they were listening to little old me.
Yeah. That's so awesome though. I love the fact that, we can talk about this because I think that so much of the time, a lot of people, when they look at their stats, they're kind of like, is this good? Like, how should I be feeling about this? Like, are people trolling me, cause I don't know anybody there. And I'm like, no, that's what's supposed to happen. It's like, however people found you, no matter what it could have been, because I know you're active in a lot of like Facebook groups. So like, let's talk about that for a second. Like, what do you really do to?
Honestly, I think that I haven't done as good of a job as I should be as far as marketing my podcast. I know that if I did what you say to do in the course and on your podcast, on your YouTube channel, my podcast could be bigger than it is. And I haven't done that much on it. So a lot of it, people have just found me.
Right.
But it didn't happen overnight. It was something that, I started putting content out there. And I hate to use the word content because I started putting my thoughts out there. I started putting out my big why and all that good stuff. And people found me. I think that I could be a lot bigger if, as far as the podcast goes, if I did what you say. And I do every now and then. I'll put up like an audiogram on Facebook or on Instagram. And it's really, I always say it's really kind of my therapy because I get to talk about gardening as much as I want. I haven't really thought of it as being something where I make a lot of money on it, or I don't make any money on the podcast at all. But I feel like I'm building something. Right. And for me, it was, first of all, trying to find my tribe, or my tribe finding me. Not so much building an audience, but building a community, and then figure out what to do with it after that. You know, I don't think, I think I've even said this at the beginning of the podcast when I first started talking about it. I don't know that I would get a lot of sponsors because I don't recommend a lot of things to do or put into the garden as far as things you go to Home Depot and buy and spread out on your yard, because I do, you know, there's so many ways that you can disrupt what Mother Nature's trying to do. And when you get involved, it's not good for the soil or the beneficial insects or whatever. So I didn't really think that there would be too many opportunities for sponsors for my podcast. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, no, wait, I use hoses and I use clippers and I use timers, like for, you know, when the water's gonna, like right now, I'm at your house and I'm not at my house and I need a timer, you know, to go ahead and water for me. So, and then I do a lot of stuff in the kitchen where we actually cook with the harvest, or we were just talking about teas. Crystal just got a teapot.
Mm-hmm. I got a fancy teapot.
And I was like, oh yeah, I have this growing in my yard. I have that growing, and I could make a lot of my own teas. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things like KitchenAid, and I don't know, there's a lot of things that could be sponsors. But at first, I wasn't really going into it with that mindset. But now I'm thinking, okay, well, how can I take this to the next level?
Right.
And I know I could if I did more of the marketing stuff. I'll do one little thing that you tell me to do, and I was like, oh my gosh, my numbers just doubled.
Right.
What happened? What just happened?
Right.
You know, it's the whole coronavirus thing. I don't know.
Well, something I just really wanted to point out is that, like, you're not building your podcast around your life. Like, you're building your life with your podcast in it. And that's what I love. Like, did I say that right? Like,
I'm not building my life around my podcast. No,
like you're not, like, if, the reason why I want to point this out is because to mom, the most important part is the garden and making sure that is successful, like, for herself, right? And for her family and what she's trying to build there, because y'all have to go check out her YouTube channel, because she's done a few tours of the garden and everything that she's done. Plus she has just so many great tutorial videos of how you can build everything. But what I think is so fascinating is you're not doing this, your podcast and your YouTube, to monetize and to build something. You just happen to think, man, somebody else could benefit from this.
Yeah. I wish I would have known this 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's the right way to go about it. So even if, you know, you're saying, like, I'm not making money, I'm not doing all this, I find it more sustainable for you to approach it the way that you're approaching it, because, I mean, you still are doing all the things, you enjoy it. You still, like you said, it's your therapy. It's your way of, you know, sharing your message.
I would like to be able to make money somehow with what I'm doing. And I just don't know that I feel like I have it all figured out right now. Like, you know, I have thought about doing an online course. I have thought about doing, maybe I open a nursery, you know, maybe doing some workshops, or I don't know, just maybe sponsorships, maybe the monetizing on YouTube or whatever. But I know that nobody's going to buy anything if they don't even know me.
Right.
So I have always felt like, okay, so because I had been listening to podcasts for a while, I had always felt like this is my opinion. I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but that the podcast for me is more my op-ed. It's my opinion and the editorial. So I talk about the things on the podcast that I don't talk about on YouTube. On YouTube, it's really more visual, right? So you get to see what I'm talking about. So on my podcast, I give a lot of my opinion. This is why. There's, and it's something you can listen to and understand without having to see it. On the YouTube channel, I feel like it's more, this is to inspire, oh my gosh, I didn't know culinary sage was so beautiful. I mean, I would grow that in any ornamental garden, or that cilantro is great for cut flowers when it bolts and goes to seed. Now you have coriander, and just that kind of stuff belongs on the YouTube channel. And then I'm starting to see, okay, the Facebook Lives are more like in the moment and more raw, like, hey guys, I just saw this. I don't have time to do a full production on this, know? And so you see, like, you touch them on a lot of different levels. And the thing that I really like about that is if something happens to one of those platforms, or I get shut out of one of those platforms, or something happens on one of those platforms, I'm not shut down completely. I still have the podcast. I still have the YouTube. I still have Facebook Live. I still have Instagram, and then the website's another story. I've got to do some work on my website. That's really where I feel like I've got a big hole there. I have the website, did a lot of work on it at the beginning, really just kind of got lax on that. And, but having a home and the email list, where, there's things on the email list that I don't share anywhere else. So, still trying to figure it out. Don't have it all figured out yet.
So what is your, well, first of all, I think it's amazing that, just think back to a year ago though.
Yeah.
You weren't doing any of that. Like maybe you had put out, were you doing Facebook Lives last year? I don't know that you were.
I was still really trying to get over myself as far as being in front of the camera.
But I'm just saying, like, I really just want to acknowledge how awesome it is. Because now you're just like, man, I'm just going to turn on. I'll ask her a question about something when we're together at their house in the garden, and I'll ask her a question. She's like, "Ooh, let's turn on Facebook Live. Like, let's make this a Facebook Live. Let's do this." So I'm excited about your excitement and your comfortability. Like, I don't even know if I just made up a word, but like you're just so comfortable. I do that. We do that a lot around here, but just feeling super comfortable doing it. But I do have a question. Did you find it easier to, because I know you said you had a YouTube channel, like you've had it for a while. You weren't really like publishing very often, but then you started your podcast, and then you did that for a while before you really, like, you're cranking out YouTube videos now.
I just started doing YouTube again. But it's amazing because, like I said, I had 0 subscribers. I had 1 subscriber, maybe you.
Yeah.
and then maybe 6 views.
Yeah.
But now, like, one of the past videos that I put out, it had like 600 views.
That's crazy.
And I have been doing it for probably about 6 to 8 weeks now.
Okay. So you've been,
at the time of this recording, I just really started again. Yeah.
Do you find it easier to create content for YouTube now that you've been doing the podcast?
Yes.
Okay.
And the really cool thing about that is I can announce on the podcast. I just did a YouTube video about this. I can announce on the YouTube that I just, I talked about this in the podcast. I'm not going to do that here. And then it refers people back to, so it's kind of like, whenever I was in sales, they said you touch people on all different levels. You touch them with the sight and the sound and the feel and the smell, and you try to touch them on as many levels as you can, because now they get to see a face.
Yeah.
There's no makeup on it, but and there's a ball cap on it, and there's sunglasses on it, but still it makes you, as the content creator, it makes you more real. It makes you more 3-dimensional.
Yeah.
And like, if I were just putting up pretty pictures on Instagram and nobody ever heard my voice, they don't really get it,
right.
But now they hear my voice and they're like, oh, okay, she's country girl. She's got that Texas twang. And so, yeah. Anyway,
That's
I don't know if
awesome.
I answered your question.
No,
really,
you did, because that's really, because I found that a lot of people lately have been asking me more about producing both a podcast and a YouTube. And I keep going back to, I had my podcast up and running for about a year before I started YouTube,
right,
before I really started putting out, because I'd had a YouTube channel just like you for a long time. I tried it. It did not work very well, but I find that if you already have some numbers where you can look at your data and say, oh, this one podcast did really well, and it would be very good visually, so I'm going to make a YouTube video on that. I've just found that creating content across both is a lot easier now because I can see it's almost like you're testing the waters. Like you can even test it on a Facebook Live and then you see people's reaction. You're like, oh, I'm going to make a podcast about this. Oh, I can make a short YouTube video about it.
Right.
So that's been my experience. That's why I wanted to see if that's been kind of the same for you.
And, we were talking about this the other day too, is that if so podcasting is still very, very kind of like an emerging market, right? It still has a long
infancy.
way. Yeah. It's definitely not even in the crawling stages, even though it's been around for a long time. It's a very slow toddler.
Yeah.
But YouTube's been around for a long time. And, wouldn't it have been great if we had started with YouTube when they started? But, you don't know what you don't know. But with podcasting, there's, I feel like we are pretty much in on the ground floor. Even though we're not someone like Oprah Winfrey or Kate Hudson or, what's his name? Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Even that we're not those people. We didn't come in with a big audience. We're building a community.
Right.
And that carries over to YouTube, and then YouTube carries over, and then Facebook. And, it's just amazing to me. I'm like, now when I'm talking to people, I have to ask them, where are you from? I can't assume that they're from Zone 8A in North Texas. Right. Because I may be talking to someone who's in Abu Dhabi, or I may be talking to someone who's in Blackheath, England. Yeah. It's just, I don't know, Latvia.
Yeah.
Whatever. And that definitely, I can't assume anymore that it's my neighbor down the street or friend from high school.
Right. Which is really cool.
Really, really cool.
This is very cool. Well, I want to wrap this up. How we do all of our interviews. Or are you up for some rapid fire questions?
Sure. I don't even remember what they are. I've listened to your podcast, but I don't remember what they are.
I'm going to catch you up on the spot.
All right.
Well, my first one is, what's one piece of advice you would give to a brand new podcaster?
I would say clarity comes from engagement. The great Marie Forleo always says that, and it's so true. It's just do it. Nike says it. Ben Franklin said it. Everybody says it in a different way, but if you start doing it, you're going to figure it out. Yeah. And that's your best teacher. It's like, this is what I say about gardening too, is you can tell someone how to swim, or you can actually get in the water and start swimming. And it's the difference is huge.
Or she can do like she did with us. They just threw us in the deep end.
Yep. We'll be here. If you stay under for a couple of minutes, we'll come get you.
It's okay. Both my parents were lifeguards back in the day. We were fine. We turned out okay, I think.
Crystal started swimming, by the way, you guys, when she was about 6 months old, 3 months old, 6 months old, something like that.
Yeah. They just threw us in the water. And I think it's because we watched the Blue Lagoon. I always think about the Blue Lagoon and that baby was swimming.
Blowing your face. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Okay, so my next question is, do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
Mm-hmm. I just took a drink of tea. I needed that Snickers moment. I would say that I have always been a perfectionist, or I always feel like now I know that it was an excuse for me to procrastinate. That's good. Because I'm one that does a lot of Excel spreadsheets, and I do the research. I'm an Enneagram. What did you?
5.
5.
You're
yeah.
5.
Yeah. I always have to ask her what my number is. I know what it means. It's like very detailed, very
the data.
Show me the data. Yeah.
So you're a perfectionist, you would say?
So I would say, now that I know it's an excuse for me to not start, it's a lot easier for me to say, no, I'm not a perfectionist anymore. Because you can't. I mean, with gardening, you can't. You just got to start doing it.
Well, that's what I like to tell people. I'm a recovering perfectionist. Yeah. Like I used to be as well.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Recovering perfectionist is the best way. It's like I used to be. I still have those tendencies.
I mean, I do like for everything to be just like I want it.
Right.
But gardening definitely teaches you humility and patience.
Humbling. Yeah. Humbling experience. Okay. So my next question is, it's a 2-part question. Who would be your dream podcast to be on? And who would be your dream podcast guest?
Oh gosh, I probably should say Crystal Profit, but I'm not going to.
up.
I would if Elaine Ingham, Dr. Elaine Ingham, if you're listening to this, I would love to have you on my show. So, yeah, she is a soil scientist. She's got a PhD in microbiology, and she's doing things for the world that you'll never know. It's amazing. She would be my ideal podcast guest, but she doesn't do a podcast, so I wouldn't be able to be on her show. Whose show would I would love to be on Kate Hudson's show.
With Oliver.
Yeah.
Sibling revelry.
Yeah. Just because she's just so cool.
I
And
know.
actually, my ideal listener, I gave her a name. Her name is Kate.
Mhm. I love Kate. And I think I told you about that podcast.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
And the reason why is because if y'all have ever listened to that show, that's almost exactly how me and my oldest brother are whenever we interact with each other.
Yeah.
There's a
It's
lot
just
more
so
cussing
real.
on there, but
And if you don't know who that is, that's Goldie Hawn's daughter. She's an
Yeah.
actress.
But yeah, no, that's awesome. I would love to be on their show too. Maybe I mean, we're not siblings.
I think it would be
though.
really cool to be, I mean, this is not a podcast, but to be on John Krasinski's show, The Good News.
Yeah, some good news.
Yeah, some good news.
Yeah, his YouTube channel.
I don't know what I would say, but I'd just like to stand there and just.
You could say you're saving the world one fruit and vegetable at a time. I mean, that's some good news. Okay, my last question is, I totally just blanked out. What is my last question?
It would be pretty cool to be on Oprah's show.
That actually was, for sure, being on that. That actually was my last question. So my final question, final is, where can everybody find you?
Okay, well, on Instagram, it's ediful.gardens.
And we'll link to this in the show notes.
And on YouTube, I'm under my name, Nanette Blair. Not really sure why I did that. Actually, I have a secret reason why I didn't do it under Ediful Gardens. So I'm not even gonna. That's up and coming. Something that is a dream of mine.
Watch out, guys!
Actually, I would love to do a show where you go in and it's kind of like Fixer Upper. You would go in and install an edible landscape in someone's home and show from the process from beginning to end, ending with the chef showing you how to prepare.
You
your
heard
stuff
it here
in the
first,
end.
you guys.
You
She's
did
putting
hear
it
it
out
here
into the
first.
universe.
This is definitely
Yeah, to
the
the
first time I've
universe.
ever said it out loud.
That's awesome. So
That's not going to be happening though in the next year.
so Instagram, YouTube, and then Facebook. Your Ediful Gardens. Is that your page name?
Yes.
And then
Ediful
you
Gardens.
have a Facebook group. Yeah, let's talk
Yes.
about your Facebook group.
The Facebook group is Edible Landscaping.
Yeah, and so she'll share her latest YouTube videos in there, and she's just trying to grow a community that I think is super
Well,
cool.
the edible landscaping is really more for people that are wanting to do it or are doing it right now, so they can just kind of really. I really planned on being hands off, except for me participating as a member of the group as part of the community, kind of a round table, where I really wanted the group to be more in charge there than me.
Yeah.
So, but the Ediful Gardens is where I do post a lot of the videos, Ediful Gardens on Facebook.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the Ediful Gardens podcast
Yeah.
is the podcast.
And I don't know if is it on Ediful Gardens, y'all. She goes live with my dad, and it's the cutest thing ever. But
That's
that might
usually
be
on
under
my
your
personal Facebook.
So sorry, unless you're friends with her, you can't. But I'll reshare them sometimes. So if you follow me on there, y'all are so dang cute, and it makes me laugh
What was the
so
last
much.
thing we did? Oh, we just couldn't help it. So yeah, REO Speedwagon was our jam in high school. We didn't even know what jam was in high school, but yeah, REO Speedwagon was our group, and they they came on the radio when we were on the way down here, and I was like, we just got to do this.
Oh, it was perfect. It was so cute. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Okay, that interview was so good. We had so much fun. Just sitting a safe distance. Like I said, we were like, oh, should we say when we recorded this? We still didn't. We didn't tell y'all. We didn't let the cat out of the bag when we actually did that episode, but it was so much fun. especially being able to just share this entire journey with her. Like I said, I don't do her whole podcast for her. And it just makes me so much more proud of everything that she's accomplished on her journey, right? Like it's almost like I feel like I haven't stepped in and taken anything away from her because she's done all these amazing things on her own. And I'm so proud. I'm such a proud daughter. And I'm thrilled to see where she's been able to take her podcast journey. And I hope that today's podcast episode was a little bit more inspiration for those of you who are just getting started or you're within your first year. I hope that you took away some insight about how you can pivot and change depending on what's going on in your own lifestyle or what you see is working or not working for your audience. And I just hope that you are truly inspired. But that does it for today. So make sure you go check out the Ediful Gardens podcast and subscribe to the show here because we have lots of other stories coming up about people that have podcasts and people that can help you with your podcast. And I don't want you to miss any of those future episodes. Make sure you go check out the show notes at crystalprofit.com/episode 154. And remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere.
Hey, Profit Podcast listeners, thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.